Hello and welcome. This is P.F. Wilson from Loyalty 360. I want to thank you for attending today's webinar, The Battle for Love and Loyalty, Key Findings from the Loyalty Report 2017, presented by Scott Robinson, Vice President Loyalty Solutions, and Sean Claessen, Vice President Creative and Strategy for Bond Brand Loyalty. Today, Scott and Sean will discuss how loyalty programs are one of the biggest drivers of brand choice today, and how consumers are evaluating these program experiences on elements far beyond just dividends and rewards. Additionally, they will present key findings from the Loyalty Report 2017 and highlight opportunities to help brands punch up their weight and differentiate the member experience and increase program performance. As a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and shared with all attendees after the event. If you have any questions, feel free to enter them in the question box on your GoToWebinar dashboard, and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. And with that, I will turn it over to Scott and Sean.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for friends of ours on the West Coast. This is Scott Robinson. We're delighted so many of you are joining us today. We've been looking forward to this conversation. For us, this loyalty report, now in its 7th year, is one of the favorite things we love to sort of share out with the community of marketers as well as with our clients and partners. So we're delighted that you could join us today. Sean, this year we called this study The Battle for Love and Loyalty.
Dramatic, right?
What does that mean to us, and what do we want to say about that to friends joining on the phone?
Yeah, maybe a bit of a spoiler alert there. We're going to get into a lot of the new challengers that are in these categories contending for that kind of champion of the category spot. There's different strategies, let's call them different fight tactics out there. I think we wanted to make this year's report a bit of a tally of who's winning, who's losing, which things are punching above their weight, and how we can, as program operators, as marketers of all sorts who are looking for the outcomes that loyalty offers, whether it's formally within a program or if the customer experiences that we are building in order to engender loyalty to our brands and the businesses that underpin those brands. There's a lot of great learnings and insights that are coming directly out of the mouths of members and consumers participating in many different types of initiatives.
The two voices on the other end of your phones are these two smiling faces up in front of you. As I mentioned, I'm Scott Robinson. I head up our design and strategy work. For me, the loyalty report helps us keep our finger on the pulse of what's important to consumers, what drives their behaviors, what drives their emotions. It's a terrific tool and asset as well to help guide our clients and partners and even many of you for which programs and initiatives are performing well. For those challenger brands, what things are important to consumers that they need to ameliorate. And also the key point of how programs fit into the overall customer engagement mix. Certainly marketing contains a lot of levers and tools, among which loyalty programs are but just one. And so this tool helps us, sort of leaders in customer engagement work, inform the work we're doing for clients. Sean, do you want to say a quick hello and then maybe a quick intro to who we are as Bond Brand Loyalty?
For sure, and we'll touch on some of the innovations that we're seeing, driven by the insights that should come out in today's discussion. One of the things that maybe to ground the conversation in, Bond is a customer engagement agency, and we largely specialize in loyalty solutions, customer experience solutions that, again, drive some of that loyalty outcome for brands and marketers kind of in all kinds of different areas of a company. And so a lot of that work is insight driven. You'll see today a lot of attitudinal data, stated behavioral data. We often are mashing up kind of those behavioral and attitudinal elements to understand what people think they will do, what people feel, what they perceive their behaviors are like. And we also, as operators of many initiatives, customer experience initiatives, as well as loyalty initiatives, we can compare that against what we actually see people doing or not doing in those particular initiatives. And so all of the work that you'll see here in the loyalty report is kind of driven by that orientation. Think of us as a bit of a hybrid between kind of management consultant rigor and the executional capabilities and creativity of an agency, and that tends to be the way that we look at the marketplace.
One of the things that we'd love to do during today's discussion is periodically interject some polls for each of you to participate, share your feedback into the conversation, and we'll share it back out with all of you. Carly, on the Loyalty 360 side, if you want to launch the first poll so participants can give us a view of this, here's one thing we'd love to get a sense for from all of you. Just as we're talking about loyalty initiatives, loyalty programs, give some thought to this statement and tell us whether you, for your organization, agree or disagree. Our organization treats our loyalty program members, so those of you that are operating a program, your members are enrolled in that initiative, treats our loyalty program members as our best customers and better than those non-member customers who are customers of yours but aren't participating. We'll give you a few seconds just to fill that in, and in a few moments' time, we'll share back out the results. So maybe another 20 or so seconds, Carly.
One of the reasons we do this, as Scott mentioned about the loyalty report in general, it's keeping tabs on what participants in these initiatives have to say about them. We'd like to be able to pit that against, if you will, some of the perceptions that marketers have about the programs they're operating, the experiences that they're providing for customers or members of any type. To understand where the gaps are in those understandings.
Okay, Carly, thanks. We'll come back to the poll results in a few moments. Let us just take a moment to introduce the lead actor in today's movie, the loyalty report, the study itself. As I mentioned, now in its 7th year, this is literally our biggest and best yet. We've covered responses from some nearly 30,000 consumers. So for those of you that lean on market research and customer research to inform your own work, you'll know that this is a very significant sample. This is our highest number of programs that we've covered yet. So across some nearly 55 or so program attributes, ranging everywhere from the mechanics to the rewards, from experience elements, we've assessed across some nearly 400 programs, significantly detailed results, and we'll share some of those out today. It's important to mention this study covers all of the sectors in which loyalty exists today, everything from hospitality and travel to retail, consumer packaged goods, dining, QSR, etc. So literally where there is a program, we've attempted to capture feedback from those participants.
And increasingly that list includes initiatives that may not purport to be a loyalty program, but we kind of joke around the shop to say, it looks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it's probably a loyalty program. A lot of manufacturers, and that's a broad description of a lot of different businesses, are venturing into this territory, building direct relationships with their customer or their end consumer. So either in a B2B capacity or a B2C capacity. And I think we've been taking greater and greater stock of all the complexion of what those initiatives look like, which is why that number continues to climb.
One of the ways that we would invite you to sort of access the great insights from the study, at our website, you're welcome to download an executive summary. And literally we cover a number of topics salient to marketers today. One of the things that many of you have counted on this work to yield over the years is how your program is performing, how your participants rank and score your program, how it stacks up in relation to your competitor set. What's important to us as well, living under that, is not just how programs are scoring, but rather what's driving the satisfaction and engagement of participants in those programs. So you heard me mention a moment ago those sort of 50 attributes. We're able to assess which of them are most important and which are less important in terms of the things you need to get right to better engage your participants. Many of you likely spend lots of your time on the reward, the redemption, and so given how much of a focus that is for you and the investment many of you are making in the reward, it's important for this work to cover that important topic as well. But beyond the reward and beyond the monetary dividends and the stuff that participants are getting out of programs, it's important to consider the full value proposition that includes the experience elements, those softer elements. And so we've got a point of view on how to optimize that, literally how to buy down dividend that is often expensive. Increasingly, and many of you will know, traditionally discrete marketing disciplines are converging. So what was once customer experience is now also loyalty, is now also CRM, and these things are converging. And so how to make sure that you're applying the best principles of the customer experience disciplines into loyalty. We'll talk a little bit about on another day, not today, but the important role that your people play, the representatives of your programs, of your brands. That is a paramount tool in your asset kit to engage customers, and so this work covers that as well.
And that's one that you and I have been kind of touring conferences and other types of forums where we can convey to people the degree to which they are sitting on an under-leveraged asset in that capacity, that their people and what their people can do to help enable and help engender loyalty is kind of an untapped potential for a lot of brands and a lot of programs. Even.
Yeah, exactly. Many in our business get invited to speak to the media, to present at conferences. Sean, I think what you're referring to, in partnership with Loyalty 360, we hosted a workshop on this topic, the loyalty ecosystem, a few weeks ago in Orlando. Yeah. So this study is informing a broader view of customer engagement that goes beyond programs. And then certainly many of you are wrestling with how to interpret the emerging technologies that come onto your radar.
Every 15 minutes.
Every 15 minutes. What is blockchain? What is artificial intelligence? How do we apply machine learning to our work? And so at a minimum, this work covers mobile and other forms of digital media, but we're very cognizant for how those emerging technologies are playing into your marketing mix.
So having to choose some topics today to fill up the rest of our time, we probably can't get that whole breadth in there.
And we won't. So we're going to touch on, and we'd love to continue the conversation on some of those other topics with you later. But for today, in the 50 minutes or so that we've got remaining in our time together, we'll give you a sense for what's driving satisfaction. We'll tease you a little with some rankings from some select sectors, but know that we would love to share more out with some of those other sectors with you later. We'll talk about rewards. We'll talk about redemptions. And we'll talk about a tool we've got in this year's study to optimize the value proposition. I think what you'll hear from us today is a general theme of the experience. So while we will be talking about the reward, while we will be talking about the value proposition,
we kind of aren't.
We're really talking about the experience. So hang on to that as a general theme. We're first going to table sort of three headlines related to these topics today, so that as we're getting into the weeds, as we're getting into some of the data in the study, we will want you to be hearing sort of these next three key headlines. First, and you'll recall the poll question that we invited you each to respond to a few moments ago. This relates to that. Programs are not treating their best customers any differently than the rest of their customers. The experience that program members are deriving from their program experience looks like, feels like, is like the experience that customers in general are getting elsewhere. So we'll talk a little bit about treating your best better than the rest today. Secondly, related to the topic of the reward, the anticipation of the reward, the chance to have access to the things that you're about to redeem for, that you have access to as part of your participation in programs as a member, that in and of itself is just as sweet, drives just as much satisfaction as actually having the reward in hand, in pocket, on the wall in your home. So a little bit more about the earning experience that programs are enabling and how to get more out of that path to redemption eligibility rather than counting on the reward itself to do all that work. And then lastly for today, but not certainly in all the conversations we would love to have, you can literally buy down what is for you an expensive dividend, so the percent you're offering back in your loyalty proposition, the monetary benefits, with a better experience. So we'll show you today a little bit about how programs offering less dividend can shore up their value prop and compete with those offering more, and do so in a more discerning or differentiating way. So here are those three things from us today, and what we'll love to do is sort of dig into each of the details living behind each of those. Along the way, here's who we are. We would love you to share out. For those of you on your mobiles, for those of you sitting at desk, watching on screen, we would love you to, if you'd like, share out some of what you're hearing today or later. There we are at Create a Bond, our handle, Loyalty Report, and certainly our partners handle, Loyalty 360. And there are Sean and I in terms of our Twitter handles as well.
Still haven't gotten to that first Scott Robinson that doesn't have the Scott J. Robinson.
I was not the first one in Twitter.
Okay.
Just as we're getting underway, there's a few things that we track on an annual basis in each of these 7 years of the study so that we can keep our finger on what's changing over time with some of the macro metrics that are important to operators based on what consumers are telling us. First, and this relates to the poll question, and we'll put those results up in a moment, Carly. Only 22%, so about a fifth of program participants say that their experience is better. Nearly 80% of participants in your programs are telling us that you are not enabling an experience for them that is any different from that which you're enabling for your non-member customers in general. So that should feel like a huge call to action for us all. Again, our best customers tend to be in programs, and we'll want to be making sure we treat our best customers best. And programs is one means of enabling that. And so what this is saying is that there's work for programs to be doing to enable a better experience for members. Carly, let's throw up the results from that first poll question, because what we'd love to see, along with audience, is the difference between the marketer perspective and the consumer perspective.
So Scott, I mean, this would be fairly consistent with what we've seen in lots of other forums. There's a general perception marketer side that says, I am, in fact, providing a better experience for those folks when I think we're hearing overwhelmingly directly from customers, consumers, members, that that's not the case. And so,
this feels like a chasm, Sean, between the marketers who think your organization is enabling a better experience, and yet only a fifth of your members are saying that.
Yeah.
So quite a gap between your own perspective and that of your members. So take note of that.
And truly, I think the conversations we've had around this have been about, expectation keeps moving, expectation keeps rising, and I think there is a lag that happens between the initiatives and the work that is done brand side in order to enable those things, that then receipt and recognition of those things on the consumer end or on the customer end. Yet still, I mean, this is a fairly significant gap to work on.
Carly, while we're in the poll, would you mind launching the second poll, please? And we'll just get a read from participants today on the second topic. Here's what we'd love to ask you, because we're going to provide a point counterpoint to this statement, or rather the impact of this statement in a moment. Think about, for those of you operating a program, we know there's a number of our friends listening to sort of learn today, and that you're not necessarily program operators, but for those of you that are,
we're flattered that you're listening. So
we're flattered.
Thank you for that.
Give us a sense, or let's give us all a sense for versus a year ago, what loyalty is costing you today, or what you're investing in loyalty today is higher, somewhat higher, the same, somewhat lower, or significantly lower than it was 12 months ago. So Carly, we'll just leave that open for 20 seconds or so, allow everybody the chance to give a perspective on program operating costs and investments versus a year ago.
I think we're all expecting that the investments our organizations are making are having a particular kind of impact, us getting a gauge of whether or not those expectations within your organization are rising such that more investment is going into this endeavor. It starts to paint a fairly telling picture of what's going on.
Carly, let's take a look at the results of this poll first. Okay, what do we see here? 20, 40, wow. Yeah, so certainly over half of us say the investment we're making is up. Another almost a third, a little over a quarter, say about the same. Only about 15, 17% say we're spending less today.
Yeah.
And so that's important. Let's take a look at that adjacent to this next data point from our study. Carly, back to the presentation for a moment, please. In general terms, across all of the sectors, across all of the programs, across those 30,000 participants that we surveyed, the satisfaction they have, and this is a top box score on a 5-point scale, the satisfaction that they have with program today is the same or only marginally higher than it was last year. And so think about the investment that you are all making. It's increasing, or a good chunk of you say it's increasing. Only 15% say it's down. Consumer expectations are up. The ease with which we can enroll as consumers in programs is up. But this satisfaction is a bit of a contrast. We would have wanted to see much higher, given the increase that we're all making in programs today.
I think as programs, more programs go into market, as programs that have been in market reach new tenures, reach new maturities, there's a lot more members in those programs. And so you're going to see the conversation unfold today about rewards being kind of the weightiest portion of the spend that goes into these programs. And our job would be to give you ways in which you don't have to lean so heavily on that component. It's an expensive one. It's a linear cost ramp. You'll only get out what you put in there. And we're trying to look for ways for you to get more out than what you necessarily put in.
Satisfaction doesn't necessarily pay the bills. And so we look at the things that are the important business outcomes of the investments that you're making in programs. The extent to which participants stay in your program, stay with your brand, the extent to which they're spending more after having joined, the extent to which the value propositions that you each are serving up to influence when, where, what participants are purchasing from your brands. Well, the first thing to notice here is these are significant numbers. So we should all be rest easy to know that the investments we're making in loyalty are paying dividends. So 3/4, 80%, 2/3, these are very significant results, and likely very few, if any, of the other marketing initiatives that you're investing in would garner such high results like a program is here.
And we often call out for people, I mean, the degree to which this is recognized by participants, recognized by members or consumers or customers in these programs and initiatives, that's pretty significant. I think the degree to which someone would say, you know, this other form of marketing totally influenced where I went and what I spent and how frequently I go and visit that brand, or how much I stick with them, even if there's some kind of trying experience there. I think the initiatives that look like loyalty, formal programs or not, tend to yield this kind of recognition from participants. I know this is having an impact on me. I recognize the relationship that I'm in here.
We often get asked, and so we make sure the study can help us answer the ways in which, or the extent to which participants are enrolled and participating in programs today. So one of the things that we know is it's getting easier and easier to join programs. You know, provide an email at point of sale or opt in through an app on a mobile device. The extent to which participants are enrolling is going up because it's getting easier. But what isn't changing, or what is relatively flat over time, is the extent to which participants are actively engaged, meaning having made a purchase in the program over the past year. It has gone down slightly, you know, from nearly 8 back in 2014 to a little under 7 today. What this is telling us is that consumers have a bit of an engagement threshold. They have a maximum capacity with which they can engage with a number of programs, and they are at it. And so our job, you know, Sean, mine, others here at Bond, our job is to help our clients. Our job is to help make sure that their programs are in that 6.7 to make sure that they don't fall victim to falling into the rest of that 14.3.
Yeah, there's significant investment there that's going sort of unrecognized.
So some of today's conversation is really designed to make sure that the ways in which you're operating, the things you're serving up to participants, helps guide you to staying among that 6.7. One of the topics that we mentioned we would cover is satisfaction, and we'll do a little bit on talking about how in select categories programs are stacking up adjacent to each other, but more so we'll talk a little bit about what's driving that satisfaction. Here's what we found in general on this topic. Experience is the most weighty element of what drives stat. So we evaluated some nearly, as you heard me say earlier, some nearly 55 different attributes. Experience reigns most weighty. We also did a look at each of the programs across all of the sectors that we assessed. And here's how sort of that average satisfaction stacked ranks across sectors. Interesting, you'll see there on the left-hand legend, payment programs or co-brands tend to outperform non-tender forms of loyalty initiatives. Maybe a little bit of a selection bias there. Those that tend to be most engaged with brands would more likely take a payment card. But also, taken at face value, the co-brand component of a value proposition or the payment component of a value proposition often serves as an accelerator to getting to the benefits inside the non-tender value prop more expeditiously. And so not surprising to us that the payment program sectors tend to ride more highly, but you'll see some of the lower categories in the work that the non-tender programs have to do there, airline, rental, hotel, even CPG. So good context setting data point, just sort of frame up today's conversation. But as I mentioned, we did evaluate those nearly 55 different attributes. And when we look at those across each of the programs in the study, we get guidance like this. And later in today's conversation, we'll let you know how you can access yours. If your program is in our study, we'd be delighted to have a conversation with you about it. Many of us likely have Amazon on our radar, and many of you likely compete with Amazon in some form or another. So it often serves as a good benchmark.
Increasingly, I feel like everybody is competing with Amazon.
So we'll come back to that in a little while. But those 55 attributes net out to an aggregated view like this. So we looked at the program experience elements. We looked at the ways in which the program lives up to and fulfills the promise that the brand is making. We believe that it's important for the program to support that brand promise and look and feel only like that brand, not mimicking others. You heard us talk today a little bit already about the importance of the human touch or that people play in engendering engagement, as well as some of the digital means of engaging participants. That tells 2/3 of the story. So think about where you as program operators are spending your attention, focus, even your investment. My guess, our guess, it tends to be often on the reward mix, the redemption experience. That's important. Don't get us wrong. We're not saying that it's not. That is a good chunk of this overall stat driver, but it pales. It is literally half of the importance that is the experience elements inside programs.
Yeah, I mean, experience sort of punches above its weight 2-to-1 versus the dividend. The degree to which we can make people feel positive emotions, have them feel recognized, ease the experience on our digital properties of any sort, in the mobile app, on the website, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things are expense as well. If you're running a program, you would know that. It's a one-time expense in many cases, or it's a maintenance expense. It's not a linear, ongoing expense every time somebody hits the threshold you needed them to hit to enjoy a redemption. And so you'll hear us heavily weight the emphasis to the right-hand side of this through the rest of the conversation.
Sean, let's take a quick pause from the discussion on program satisfaction and drivers and talk a little bit about some of the rankings. We know many folks count on this study to help inform how they're performing versus others. Before we do that, do you want to say a little bit about our new friend Alexa?
Yeah, so we probably won't do this today. We've made some of this data available as a skill on the Amazon Marketplace for Alexa, whether you've got an Echo or one of the other means by which you can access it. Again, in an effort to make the data more available, let people query it for themselves and find those insights that they're looking for. So stay tuned on that front. We'll be making that skill publicly available. Right now, she's just on tour with Scott and I in person when we travel around.
Well, we'll do the narrative version. Alexa, which programs rank most highly in the retail category if we don't look necessarily at grocery, pharma, and fuel, or some of those frequent categories?
You'll pardon her bias to have Amazon Prime listed first.
Yeah, she had nothing to do with seeing Prime rank highest here. And actually, maybe coincidentally, Amazon's Prime does rank highest. And in a moment, we'll talk about some of the things that drive satisfaction in this category, but things like the extent to which programs are meeting member needs. When I think of that, I think about the ways that the shipping benefits inside Prime fulfills members' need for access or expedient access to the goods they're selling. Certainly, we know too that the enjoyment that participants have as part of their program experience rides very high, and again, you'll see that in a moment. That has me think of things like streaming video and the ways in which you can interact with your photos on any device stored on your Prime account.
For sure.
And then I think too, one of the things as well that relates to enjoyment is the ways in which members get to interact with the program. So, you know, I can simply, although you know, maybe not that prevalently used yet, we can simply, through our voice, invite Alexa to add an item to our cart. Or through our mobile apps, we can literally take a photo of a product, sort of showrooming anywhere we go, to have that be added to our cart as Prime members. And so
those eases and conveniences and whatnot really change people's level of satisfaction in a program. And they have nothing to do with a discount or a dollar symbol or a dividend that's tied to the reward itself.
Exactly. Let's take a look at the other side of retail and here focus on some of the more frequent grocery, drugstore, fuel. Sean, we have the privilege of spending a lot of time with some of our grocery clients and thinking about what's important to their customers and what we should build into value propositions for them. As you greet this list, what do you see as any surprises, anything confirmed?
Yeah, maybe even connected to that last list, you know, given Amazon's recent announcements, I'm almost certain we're going to see some version of that on a slide like this next year with the purchase of Whole Foods.
Alexa, please add laundry detergent to my Prime account as sold at Whole Foods. Yeah.
Please add lettuce. Please add. I think there's a couple of things. I mean, the emotional sort of connection to some of these things might not be immediately apparent. These are categories that operate relatively rationally, whether you're talking about grocery or you're talking about gas or something like that. And I think what we've seen in programs in this category that have differentiated themselves, they've created a kind of program experience that has a lot more emotion tied to it than you'd expect. You know, if I'm swiping a card at the gas pump for benefit I earned by shopping for groceries, I would think that's a fairly rational kind of proposition. And yet, you know, there is an emotional moment where you see the price roll back on the pump, almost like a reverse kind of slot machine, and come to zero and the corners of your mouth go up. You know, it makes a certain kind of sound, and an individual on the other side of the pump peeks around and says, you know, are you getting the free gas? And you're like, yeah, I am getting the free gas. And there's this like weird sort of moment that happens between human beings and individuals around a program experience. And I would say, like, is that the loyalty program? Is that the customer experience that they've built and planned for and managed properly that engenders loyalty? Like, the answer is yes. And I think we'll see more of those kinds of initiatives, more of those kinds of mechanics show up in this category going forward.
One of the things you've heard us say a couple times is beyond the rankings, beyond the ratings, there's a set of attributes that we've assessed for what are the most important things, what are the weightiest elements that drive satisfaction. These are those. These are the top 10 things in that list of 55 that when you get these things right, versus those others, you derive more satisfaction dividends, higher propensity to stay, spend more in the programs. And so things like, as you heard us talk about Amazon and the way it's meeting customer needs, the way it's serving up a better and more enjoyable program experience, the ease with which you can add items to your cart. So this story is a little different in each sector. You wouldn't be surprised to see some of those people elements ride more high in hospitality, loyalty. And so on another day, we'll dig a little deeper on just exactly how this list stacks across each sector, because we would love to share that out as well. One of the things that you heard us say a moment ago is satisfaction doesn't necessarily pay the bills. The things that are likely on your program or initiative scorecards likely have to do with incremental spend, incremental retention. You have your objectives and you're counting on your initiatives to deliver things beyond satisfaction to your business. And so when we even look at, consider your objectives, you may prioritize one of these more highly than the other. The story too differs a little bit for the specific objective that you're driving. Those satisfaction metrics on the left are the top 5 in driving stat. A handful of them also hold true regardless of whether you're trying to engender positive word of mouth, whether you're trying to curb attrition, or whether you're trying to drive incremental spend. But as we look down each of these objectives, you might need to sacrifice some of your efforts around making your brand experience better in favor of earning higher trust and being perceived as more trustworthy if you're really trying to earn recommendations and having your members say positive things.
Referrals, and anything of that sort.
If you are focused on retention and trying to get participants to stay longer, you will need to focus on a different set of important attributes. The way in which the program makes the brand experience better is important. Trustworthiness continues to be important. But you also want to make sure that your program is consistent or is in line with what your customers and members expect from your brand. And so those things drive retention. If you're looking to drive incremental spend, again, some of these top 5 satisfaction drivers fall off the list. But added to this top 5 list are some of the things around your people. The way in which your people make members feel valued and important, how your members get greeted in hotel, in store, etc. And the way in which your representatives make your members feel positive emotions. And so to drive incremental spend, you may be surprised to see just how important the role of people are in achieving that.
That's a nice contrast, right? Like if the goal top of your list is to have customers consolidate spend with you, that's a very hard, rational goal. To see that there's kind of 3 components there that make up the top 5 that are about maybe 4: enjoyment, ease of understanding, the degree to which people make you feel something. Those feel like softer elements and components to the operation of your business or of a program. And I think to see that something as hard and rational as spend, if that's your number 1 goal with a bullet, it's largely some of the softer elements and components to your business that can do the heaviest lifting, that can punch above their weight in that overall day, which is why we break these out for people.
Okay, let's put on our audience poll question hats for a moment. Here's how we can see some of this data in action. So we've chosen a small handful of potential program versus program battles, and know that we can do some infinite number of those given the 400 programs in the study.
I feel like I should be chanting like fight, fight, fight.
Carly, toggle over to the poll question, please, and launch that, and we'll show participants a set of options, and we'll make sure that we spend our time on one of these 4 today. And we'll, on those key attributes, we will assess which programs are outperforming the other. So we'll give you about 10 or 15 seconds just to give us a sense, audience members, where you want us to spend our time, and we'll go from there.
I feel like the diaper wars is going to be messy. It's going to be a messy fight.
But know that we can on another day do hotel wars, air travel wars,
departments,
dining wars,
you name it.
Certainly, my Panera, for instance, is on the radar of many of you operating quick serve restaurants. Okay, let's see the results, Carly, and we'll spend a couple minutes just taking a look at the battleground. Okay, so we have a movie-going bunch in the audience today. Okay, well, let's toggle over to the presentation, Carly, and we'll go to that battle.
Theater versus theater.
Theater versus theater. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here's what we've got, folks. Along the bottom axis is the importance of the driver. So the further out to the right the driver is mapped, the more important it is to members in theater programs in driving their satisfaction. And on the vertical axis, you'll see that each program scores. So the extent to which each of those programs are performing well or not relative to each other on those attributes. So for instance, on the most important satisfaction driver, meeting needs, it's almost a statistical tie. AMC sort of squeaking Regal out a little bit. And then as far as program enjoyment goes, again, AMC squeaking out Regal a little bit, but almost a statistical tie. Where things start to get interesting is here more in that middle cluster of attributes. So let's take, for instance, making the brand experience better. When we look at the ways in which participation in the program earns you a better experience with theater, a better experience with their overall movie-going experience, that's where AMC is winning, and that's where Regal should spend some time shoring up the integration between program experience and overall experience with the brand.
I feel like there's a punch, counter punch there if you look a little bit to the left of that on ease of redemption.
Yeah, and so that's a great example of focusing on the experience, literally the redemption, not necessarily the reward. I think if folks on the phone today were to go to look at the value prop being served up by each of these, you know, one's a discount program, one's a points program. So there are some differences, but the ease with which participants can access those benefits is very, very important. So on another day, we can unpack some more program battlegrounds, but here's the practical way which we're applying that 55 attributes across some 400 brands. Here's what we hope you heard from this conversation. We want to encourage you to focus on the experience in your program, not necessarily the reward. We want to encourage you to spend most of your attention and effort and investment on those things to the left, or sorry, the things to the right of that battleground, the things that are most important. And you'll note too that these drivers are not universal. The things that are important in hospitality are not necessarily the same as they are in retail. And even as we illustrated in terms of the drivers by specific objective that you have, that is different as well. Let's switch gears and have a conversation about rewards and redemptions. And probably not surprising, this will feel more like a discussion on the redemption and the experience around the reward, not about the reward itself. Here's a couple things that we want you to hear from us on this conversation. As you heard us say earlier, the anticipation of the reward is just as sweet as the reward itself. And you'll see the importance of goal setting, making sure your participants know how they can use their accumulated benefit. That's important as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that. What we know in general terms, rewards and redemptions is playing a role. So those of you in your program who have redeemed for a reward, they tend to be twofold more satisfied than those non-redeemers. And still, and this is across sectors, still about a fifth of participants have not yet made a redemption. One of the things that we've assessed each year in this study is this topic, and while we don't have the real estate every year to go and affirm everything, we do have the chance to build on knowledge from years past. What we learned last year on this topic, for instance, that there's a redemption afterglow. So participants are very satisfied immediately after having made a redemption, but that wanes very quickly. What we learned last year is that the value of the reward matters very little. So those redeeming for a $10 or a $25 cert, the impact of that is not that discernible from members of your program redeeming for a higher value reward. But what we did learn is that time to reward eligibility is important. The pace with which you get your members to first redemption to next redemption, that's very important. But what matters most is the level of effort. And so while that's maybe a bit more of a subjective topic or a subjective attribute, what you're asking of participants to get there is most important. Here's what we learned this year. Your members in all programs and all sectors in aggregate are sitting on about $100 billion of unfulfilled promises. Thank yous ready to be issued. And so when we look at that, we say there's work for us to do as marketers to access that accumulated benefit to better drive some of the objectives and outcomes that you're counting on from your programs. Here's what we also learned this year. The satisfaction of participants gets higher as they accumulate more and more in your program. And so we asked for participants' perceptions of the points value that they, from a dollar sense, that they have in their programs, and satisfaction tends to go up. The closer you get to an redemption objective, we'll talk about that in a minute, your satisfaction goes up, so too does satisfaction as your value accumulates. Here's the most important point, or here's a very important point on this topic. Nearly half of participants in your programs don't know their points value. So that says to us that there's either a sort of a marketer's call to action for conveying, for better conveying member status in programs, because certainly these participants are active and engaged, but what their status is not getting through.
What we often find in this discussion is giving them their points balance is one thing, and I think we've all kind of made that readily available with ease. Them knowing what those points are worth, them and some of you might be cringing at kind of the transparency that would be required to do that. There are techniques and ways by which that if you can keep them cognizant and keep them aware of the value, you can get the kind of stat lift, 20 points plus about what they have sort of in stock with you, rather than them just kind of walking around oblivious and not knowing what that value is.
Agreed. One of the things that we lean on in our work is the neuroscience, or the science of human behavior, to drive our work. One of the things that we learned, as you heard me say a moment ago, is that the closer participants get to an objective, the more likely they are to pursue that objective and the more engaged they are. And so when we look at the difference in SAT between those with a redemption goal, meaning they know what they're going to be using their accumulated value for, and those that do not have a goal, we see over a 10-point difference in satisfaction. So simply helping members to set a goal, give their accumulation some purpose, lends a higher form of engagement. Still, a third of participants in your programs don't know what they could or will use their accumulated points balance for. You heard me say a moment ago that as accumulation increases and as progress towards a goal increases, satisfaction does too. The more closely we get to our redemption objective, the more satisfied we are, and so this proves true. But what we also know is that redemption afterglow takes effect too. So immediately after having made a redemption, participant satisfaction falls off quickly. The point that we would like to draw your attention to here is this 69 and 68%. This is where we derive, so literally that anticipation of the reward is just as sweet. This is literally a statistical tie. Members who have not yet redeemed but are eligible to redeem are just as satisfied with your programs as those who have, that television on their wall, or they've taken that trip, or that concert ticket in pocket.
So the thing that you and I have kind of mused about this is, the reward is a sunk cost. That liability sits on our books. To not get the full level of satisfaction out of the anticipation of receipt of that reward seems like a crying shame. It seems like that money is all well spent. All we need to do now to get literally double the value, 70% more value out of that thing, is make sure that we're actively communicating how close you are, how little you have left to go, that you are eligible, and that reinforcement in those communications, that's not very costly in typical program operation.
Agreed, and those are some of the things to do on the way up that left side of the curve. Immediately after having made a redemption, program operators must intervene, because there is a higher risk of attrition at that moment, to make sure that we're helping participants set their sights on their next redemption goal, that we're helping them continue to get active accumulating again next. On another day, we'll show you this curve for different reward types. You may not be surprised to see a huge gap in redemption options like gift cards and low-value merchandise. And so there's a different story to be told for each of these. Here's what we hope you heard during this discussion on redemption, not necessarily the reward. Focus on the redemption experience, not the reward. Make sure you help your participants and members set a goal. Be sure to foster an awareness of your members' status in your programs, what their accumulation is, how they're tracking towards their redemption eligibility. And also take advantage of those engagements, those opportunities to drive better outcomes, and then intervene after having made a redemption to mitigate that post-redemption risk. Sean, we've got about 10 minutes left. We'll have one last discussion on the loyalty value proposition, and then we'll invite audience members today to take a look at how they can get access to some of their program DNA.
For sure.
The topic we want to have a discussion on here is how to optimize the value proposition. And one of the things our study has done a good job of over the years is take stock of the things that are being served up to participants in programs and the impact those things are having. So as you greet this list, remember that this is a survey across sectors. You know, programs in hospitality look a little different than programs in retail, than programs in CPG. And increasingly, our study is assessing how members and consumers are interacting with auto brands, and we're using this as ways to guide discussions with clients and partners in that sector as well. But here's what you'll see on this slide: the percent of programs offering a benefit. The higher out to the right you get, the more frequently that attribute or element is in market.
Offers and promos.
Offers and promos. Most are doing that. And then the vertical axis is the impact in satisfaction that each of those different types are having. So when that feature is present, it is driving an incremental or an incremental lift in satisfaction. The other thing to look at, just as you're scanning this the scatter plot, is many of these are dividend in nature, anchored in discounts, anchored in promotions, anchored in undiscerning, non-differentiating monetary benefits. The experience elements tend to be less frequently offered, but you'll see in general that they are plotted higher up on this scatter plot. So give some thought to what you're doing as a brand, what you're doing as a program operator. Take stock of what your competitors are doing. Certainly you'll want to stay competitive to keep up and compete. But look to these experience elements. Look to the things that you as a brand can serve up that don't look and feel like monetary incentives. Beyond simply taking a survey or an inventory of what's in market, we know too, and we've built some methodology into this study to help hone in on the utility of each of these different things.
Yeah, we're looking for a tool to sort of help, if any of you are familiar with the reference on screen here, to help understand how we can play above our means, above the monetary spend we have available to us. There is not a lot of mystery left in the world with machine learning and a lot of advanced analytics techniques. This is a tool essentially that we've created in order to facilitate that discussion a lot quicker, to identify and hone in on those elements. And Scott, I think we're going to give a quick example of kind of pitting two things against each other, just to sort of illustrate how that monetary thing doesn't have to carry all the weight.
Yeah, how you can put a better team on your field, knowing the budget restrictions that you have, which of the things that you could or should offer.
I feel like we've got a sports team. We're going boxing, we're going baseball, we're going to pick another B sport name in a minute.
So this tool lets us answer a whole host of questions. Some of these may be even familiar to you in the workshops and boardrooms that you've been in lately. How can we compete with programs offering a richer dividend? Should we ante up and build parity? If we're not a sector champion and we're a challenger, how can we compete against those champion brands? And which elements from an experience perspective can punch above their weight, do more for less for our program and brand? So let's take a look just at one example, and certainly we can simulate many more on another day. Give us 1 second here. Thank you. Take, for instance, two credit card payment programs, each offering very similar rewards, each offering similar features in terms of accumulated points and miles that can be redeemed. The one on the left offering a much higher dividend. So those of you operating programs with a payment component, you'll know just how much a % dividend costs to your business.
The bigger your program, the longer tenured your program, that 1% gets pretty meaningful.
It does. It adds up very quickly, particularly in this category. And so when we ask participants in the study, you know, the preference and appeal and utility of the difference in these attributes, you'll see sort of a 2/3, 1/3 rating. However, when we add things like, and this is an experience feature, the extent to which you can use your points to purchase at everyday merchants, we get a bit of a lift in stat. Much like, for instance, La Quinta is doing with its members or for its members in allowing participants to use their accumulated points balance, say when they purchase a latte. But here's the interesting part to us. When we add some of those things that you've heard us talk about earlier, you know, the extent to which representatives of your program and brand make members feel special and make them feel important and recognized, that is literally achieving parity. Members feel that these two program options are of equal appeal. And so when you think about the 1% dividend difference between these options, what that's costing you as a program operator, simply better enabling your people, better empowering your people to make your members feel special, make them feel recognized, and leave them with a sense of positive emotion, that is quickly earning you the right to literally to buy down that 1% that you might otherwise have been tempted to make.
Yeah, I mean, eyes wide open. We're practical operators ourselves, knowing that a program is going to need to enable some technology to allow for that kind of use of the points outside of your own ecosystem. That there's a script change to the way you recognize people is again, significant increase in SAT without significant cost. The degree to which, you know, people and the representatives of your brand can make the program sort of more satisfying to people can be built around two components that we've got here. Just even improving their understanding. You know, you can get significant lift in their likelihood to stay with the brand, significant lift in retention. Yet only 20% of members today in programs would say that's happening. The representatives are making it easy for me to understand. So if you've ever made a program change, this is one of those things to pay close attention to. Those positive emotions, a 13 times lift. And again, only a fifth of people would say, I'm experiencing this.
Sean, let's maybe pause and invite people to be in touch with us if they'd like to get access to their program DNA. Certainly, we would love to help apply this work to program design work, program redesign work, customer engagement work in general. We've enjoyed having this conversation with you all today. If you would like to take a look at your program's performance DNA, we would invite you to just drop us an email at info@vaughnbl.com and put hashtag #SendMyDNA in the subject line. Just while we're closing out, huge thanks to our friends and partners at Loyalty 360. We always enjoy these initiatives with you, so thank you for your partnership. More importantly, to all of you who have joined us on the phone and devoted an hour of your day, an hour of your busy schedule to spend some time with us. It went quickly. We would love to continue the conversation, so we would invite you to be in touch.
Absolutely.
To continue on. So thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you to Scott and Sean for a great webinar. As a reminder to everyone in attendance, today's webinar will be archived on loyalty360.org and for all of our members to access, and everyone will receive a follow-up email with a recording of the webinar available for a limited time. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to Loyalty 360 and we will ensure they are directed to the appropriate party. Thanks again, and we wish everyone a great rest of your day.